All right, let's talk about something I bet you haven't given much thought to, something we all do every day, multiple times a day.
What's that?
Yawning.
Oh, yeah, yawning. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everyone yawns. But why?
Yeah, good question.
We're going to dive into a theory by Dr. Moten. He suggests that yawning is not just about tiredness.
Okay.
It's about a fascinating physiological balancing act that happens inside our bodies.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. So we've got his paper that outlines this theory, and then we've also got a review that analyzes the strengths and weaknesses of his theory.
Awesome.
So are you ready to kind of forget what you think you know about yawning?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So, Dr. Moten, his theory, it argues that yawning happens when there's this kind of mismatch, right?
Uh-huh.
Between the brain's need for oxygen and what our body is actually supplying.
Right.
So it's like our brain is sending out an SOS signal like, hey, I need more oxygen up here.
Exactly. Yeah. And his paper really focuses on these moments when we are relaxed or sleepy, Naturally, our breathing and heart rate slow down.
Right.
Which means less oxygen is being, circulated throughout the body.
Right.
But your brain, even when you're relaxed, still needs a steady supply of oxygen to function properly.
Well, that's interesting because how does the brain actually signal that need, right?
Yeah, it's not like there's some kind of oxygen meter in there that's flashing red.
Right, exactly. So how does it work?
Well, that's where carbon dioxide comes in.
Okay.
CO2, it's a byproduct of our metabolism, right?
Right.
So when we relax or become sleepy, those CO2 levels in our blood, they actually rise faster than the oxygen levels fall.
Interesting.
So Moten suggests that this increase in CO2, it kind of acts like a more sensitive, more immediate trigger than the drop in oxygen level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for oxygen levels to get really low, the body is like, oh, CO2 is rising. Let's fix this now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like an early warning system.
It's a pretty clever system when you think about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is. And you know what's even more fascinating is how the theory links the CO2 trigger to the physical act of yawning.
Okay, yeah, explain that.
You know that deep involuntary inhale we do when we yawn?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a supercharged breath.
Right.
It floods the lungs with oxygen.
Okay.
And helps us to expel the CO2 more efficiently.
Oh, wow. So it's starting to sound like yawning is less about like, I'm tired, and more about keeping our brains happy.
Yeah, keeping them oxygenated.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the core idea. And the paper actually presents two key experiments to support this hypothesis.
Okay.
One of them involves what they call self-induced sleep.
Self-induced sleep. So how do you induce sleep upon yourself for science? How does that work?
So basically, in this experiment, they had participants and they would guide them to progressively relax their bodies.
Right.
They would, focus on their breathing, slow it down,
Right.
and essentially, mimic that pre-sleep state.
Yeah.
Kind of like a guided meditation designed to make them drowsy,
Right.
So I'm guessing they probably saw a lot of yawning in this experiment, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
You guessed it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really fascinating is that almost everyone started yawning within just a minute of beginning the relaxation exercise.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah, and they kept yawning until they either fell asleep, which, naturally decreases the brain's oxygen demand, or they became more alert and increased the oxygen supply back to those normal levels.
Oh, so it's like this bridge, right? The yawning kind of keeps things in balance until either the brain needs less or the body supplies more.
Precisely.
That's interesting.
Now, the review did highlight that while this experiment is a good starting point, more research is needed to really directly prove the link between yawning and actual changes in CO2 and oxygen levels in the body.
Right, because seeing the yawning is one thing.
Yeah.
But actually measuring what's happening with the CO2 and the oxygen, that's another.
Exactly.
But it's still a really compelling idea.
It is.
Now, what about that other experiment you mentioned? The self-induced yawning.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That one sounds kind of fun for the participants, maybe.
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of fun. But this experiment, it focused on whether deliberately forcing yourself to yawn could trigger those same physiological responses even without that initial brain-body mismatch.
Oh, so like could faking a yawn trick your body into thinking it needs more oxygen?
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting question. So did they find that forcing a yawn actually had an effect?
The paper suggests that their results did support their theory.
Okay.
However, the review again points out that more research is needed to validate these findings.
Gotcha. So I guess we're just scratching the surface when it comes to understanding all the nuances of yawning, huh?
Yeah, I think so. But I think this theory offers a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
It challenges some of the traditional views. It encourages us to see yawning not just as a sign of tiredness,
Yeah.
but as like a sophisticated mechanism.
Yeah.
It ensures that our brain is receiving that constant oxygen it needs.
Yeah. To function at its best.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a window into how our bodies try to maintain this delicate balance.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that there's so much happening beneath the surface. Things that we don't even really stop to think about.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really does make you think, like, how many other seemingly simple actions, like yawning,
Yeah.
might actually be tied to these complex physiological processes that we're only just now beginning to, like, really understand.
It really does make you kind of appreciate the complexity and just the sophistication of how our bodies work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Speaking of sophistication,
Okay.
let's dive back into that self-induced yawning experiment.
Okay.
I'm curious about the implications of those findings, right? Like, if faking a yawn can trigger those same responses as a genuine yawn, even without actually needing the extra oxygen, what does that tell us about how this whole mechanism actually works?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Is
it possible that the physical act of yawning itself is enough to kind of, like, kickstart this whole cascade of physiological changes? Maybe, the deep inhale, the stretching of the jaw muscles, or even the pressure changes in your inner ear could all be playing a role in, triggering that body's oxygen regulation system.
So even if we don't consciously realize, oh, I need more oxygen.
Yeah.
Just going through the motions of the yawn could be enough to nudge things in the right direction.
That seems to be the implication, yeah.
Wow.
Of course, more research, is needed to confirm this and really kind of unravel the precise pathways involved.
Of course. But
this makes me think about when you, like, feel a yawn coming on, but you try to suppress it. Are we actually doing ourselves a disservice?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
And, one that the paper doesn't specifically address.
Right.
But if we're going with, Nemotin's line of reasoning here, it's possible that by suppressing a yawn, we might actually be interfering with our body's, natural way of trying to regulate those oxygen levels.
So next time you feel that yawn coming on, just let it out.
Yeah, maybe your brain will thank you for it.
Right, exactly.
So, while Nemotin's theory focuses primarily on these physiological aspects of yawning, the review did point out one area where this explanation kind of falls short.
And that would be?
Contagious yawning.
Oh, yeah.
That phenomenon where you see someone yawn and then...
You can't help but yawn yourself.
You just have to yawn.
It's like a reflex.
Exactly. And that's where this theory that, emphasizes this role of oxygen and CO2 struggles to provide, like, a really complete explanation.
Right.
Contagious yawning seems to be tapping into something much more social, maybe related to empathy or mirror neuron activity.
It's like our brains are wired to, like, mimic the actions of others, even when it doesn't seem to have any benefit to us.
Exactly, yeah.
So contagious yawning suggests that there might be, like, a deeper, more evolutionary reason for yawning that goes beyond just this oxygen regulation. It could be a way of signaling alertness within a group, or even, like, promoting social bonding.
Exactly.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area for future research, for sure.
So while this theory provides this really compelling new framework for understanding spontaneous yawning, it seems we still have a lot to learn about this behavior.
We do, but, that's the beauty of science.
Right.
It's a constantly evolving process of discovery. And each new finding kind of opens up these new avenues of exploration, right?
Yeah.
It leads us to question our assumptions, and it helps us refine our understanding of the world around us.
And sometimes those explorations start with something as simple and yet as complex as a yawn.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about how something as commonplace as yawning could actually hold so many mysteries.
Right.
I mean, we really kind of dug into this everyday action, and we found a potential connection to, like, the very fuel our brain needs to function.
And, this whole theory about oxygen and yawning is compelling,
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that science, it's rarely, black and white.
Right, exactly.
There's probably multiple factors that contribute to yawning. And this is just one lens to view this complex behavior through.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really highlights, how important it is to just question assumptions and continue to explore different perspectives.
Yes.
I mean, who knows what other insights about yawning are waiting to be uncovered?
I mean, maybe future research will reveal even more connections between yawning and brain activity and other physiological processes.
Yeah. Or maybe we'll finally unlock the secrets of contagious yawning,
Oh, yeah, that would be fascinating.
And all the social implications of that.
There's definitely a lot more to learn.
A lot more to learn.
But for now, I think we could safely say that we have a whole new appreciation for yawning.
Definitely, I think so.
It's a reminder that even the most seemingly insignificant actions can actually be like windows into these, the intricate workings of our bodies and our minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is.
I think it's safe to say we've learned a lot more about yawning than we ever thought we would.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's definitely been a thought-provoking, deep dive into a topic that most people probably, take for granted.
Exactly, yeah.
So next time you feel that familiar yawn coming on, pause for a second.
Right.
Think about all the stuff that might be going on.
Right.
And maybe it'll change how you view this everyday thing.
And if you happen to yawn while you're thinking about it, well, maybe your brain's just thanking you for all that extra oxygen.
That's a great way to end this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us as we explored this fascinating world of yawning.
Of course.
Until next time, keep those brains oxygenated and those questions coming